Hey everybody, welcome. Welcome, welcome. I already see so many comments in this chat. I guess y'all were lined up and ready to go. Um, Welcome to the nearly 5,000 of you that signed up for this conversation tonight. It's so exciting. If you're just joining us too, feel free to drop your name and where you're calling from in the chat. Madison, Wisconsin, great. That is where our flagship event will be for Kick Out the Clowns. Lots of Madison folks, some Midwestern people, West Coast. Welcome in, everybody. We are going to get started because we have a very packed agenda, and I want to be able to move as efficiently as possible, get to all our panelists, and save some space for you all to ask some questions at the end, because I know y'all have questions as per usual. But thank you so much for joining our conversation this evening to talk about the use of political theater and satire in our fight against fascism, and to learn a little bit more about our upcoming Kick Out the Clowns actions on June 14th. My name is Malika. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a program coordinator with Women's March, and I will be your moderator this evening, and will be helping to facilitate our discussion with our panelists. So we have some special guests with us here tonight. We will be joined by performer and social practice artist Donna Alvangada, Chris Purdy from the Chamberlain Network, Will Attic from the Union Veterans Council, and Yvonne Marovic from the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict. So we'll get to hear from our guests about the power of performance and satire as transformational tools for resistance against fascism, and how all of this comes together for our upcoming Kick Out the Clowns circus actions nationwide on June 14th. As I mentioned, you will also be able to ask questions at the end, and we will have our distributed organizer, Shauna from Women's March as well, come on and talk a little bit about how to join or host a local action. As a reminder, this webinar is being live streamed, and a recording will be available on our YouTube channel later this evening. And we will also email it out tomorrow. If you have a question that you want panelists to answer, please just go ahead and drop that in the chat, as we do not have a Q&A box on StreamYard. And then we will try to answer as many of your questions as possible that we're able to get to. And as always, please be respectful of your language in the chat. We do monitor for trolls. We will kick people out for inappropriate language, so please be careful. Shauna, if you can drop the link to the working agreements in the banner, that would be great. And if folks can just take a moment to look at that on your own time, and just do a little bit of a refresher on what those agreements look like. Okay, so in the interest of time, we're just going to jump right into our first guest speakers, Chris and Will. I would love if you both can introduce yourselves and your organizations, and then we'll jump into questions.
Thanks. I'm Chris Purdy. I'm the CEO and founder of the Chamberlain Network. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, and I think, like many veterans that serve this country, I really believe in democracy and the democratic process. And so that's what we do at the Chamberlain Network. We organize veterans in their communities to protect our democracy by working the polls on elections, by talking with their members of the State House and City Council, and just learning more about the democratic process so they can be trusted validators in this space. And I'll kick it over to my trusted friend and colleague, Will.
Hi, my name is Will Attic. I'm the executive director of the Union Veterans Council at the AFL-CIO. We represent working class veterans that are union members across the country, over 1 million of them. And we're really focused on the socioeconomics of veterans. Many times the veteran story gets told through a story that looks a lot like me and Chris on this stage. I got to be very aware about that. But the reality of it, the veterans community is this beautiful, diverse group of people who've sacrificed for their country and then do so much when they come home. And our goal is to figure out how do we mobilize as many of them to be on the right side of history, to be part of civic engagement, and to fight back when there's a time to fight back. And I think that we're at that moment right now.
Thanks, y'all. So as veterans who have sworn to protect democracy, how do you view the role of protests and civil resistance in defending democratic institutions today?
This is the First Amendment thing, right? It's freedom of speech. People have the right to go out and speak patriotically in defense of the values that they hold dear. And I think veterans understand more than anybody the right to speak out and to organize and to build collective action in protest. There's a proud history of veteran organizing and protests going back to really the foundation of this country. And so, protest and democracy go hand in hand. And I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
No, I'd be happy to a little bit. And I think that when we look at the veterans group, sometimes people think of us as a group that's really supported. A lot of yellow stickers on the back of cars, and we've got veterans healthcare, and we've got some education benefits. But the reality, veterans have had to fight for that, and then so many other things throughout our history. We do a lot of our organizing right now around the idea of the bonus army of 1932, where tens of thousands of veterans marched on Washington D.C. to demand promises made to them, and it ended with them not getting the promises, but that led to us the fight for the GI Bill, healthcare systems. Just a few years ago, when our generation of veterans faced massive amounts of cancer from certain injuries in Iraq and Afghanistan, it took hundreds of us sleeping on the Capitol steps to try and get a bill passed that everybody knew would save tens of thousands of lives. So we're used to doing this, and I think that we're proud to really be partnered here, especially we move into kind of this ridiculous day that's happening on the 14th. And we're hoping that we add a little more ridiculousness to it with all your plans that you guys are doing.
You saying ridiculousness just reminded me of that MTV show from back in the day. But thank you both for that. So as you just mentioned, this absurd event that's going to be taking place on June 14th, that actually happens to be Flag Day as well as the Army's 250th anniversary. And so from y'all's perspective, working with veterans, how can creative protest methods like our grassroots circus that will be happening nationwide be effective in calling out threats to democracy while also remaining respectful of veterans?
I think that it's going to be very important. And to me, there's, I'm not going to lie, as a former soldier, it's cool to see airplanes fly around. I like to go to the air shows. But this is not about that. This is not about the men and women and our siblings who are going to be marching and having to walk up and down the steps. This is not about celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Army. This is about celebrating someone who wants to be a demigod, someone who wants to utilize the military to show force. So whatever we can to draw attention away from that act, to give him silence, the better. So, participating in events like yours, I think is right up there. And, this entire operation seems like a bit of a joke. So I don't think it's going to take a lot of work to really put some creative thought behind it to really make them look embarrassed. So.
Yeah. And, from the troops on the street that are in that march, I think, look, I've been in marches and I hated every one of them. It's hot. You're around people you don't particularly like, and you gotta stay in formation for 4 hours. So they're not having a good time. And so anything that you can do to create an atmosphere of levity that they can look back on and say, oh, this event that they had in Madison, I wish I was there, rather than marching down Pennsylvania Avenue. I think that would be really, really exciting, and I think you'd find a lot of support.
Can I just make one point too, is that we have a massive problem. We have issues in the military. If it wasn't for women veterans, we wouldn't be meeting retention goals. We have horrible issues when it comes to military families that I think that we care a lot about. They're just as important when it comes to their quality of life, the barracks they live in, and the absurdity of them spending, upwards of $100 million on this parade when they could be actually investing in the families that serve the military is something that is not going to be, forgotten about.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally just awful values. And then what roles do you all see veterans playing in the broader movement of creative resistance against authoritarianism?
I mean, veterans are people who have served this country and understand it very well. And so as much as this community can, bring in veterans into its organizing, it's going to go a long way to amplifying your message. We recognize the trusted messenger status that veterans, like many other communities, have, and I think the veterans nationwide want to help with that. So reach out to veteran, if you're planning an event, run something by them. I guarantee you they want to help in some way. So I think we are doing an event on June 6th that we're hoping to draw a little bit of a parallel for this in DC. But we recognize that the Flag Day itself is going to be something that the veteran community locally is going to need help kind of getting out and getting organized around. So reach out to your veteran communities and see how they want to pitch in.
Will, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I would say that veterans are going to play an instrumental role and utilize this moment as an organizing tool. Many times veterans kind of get left over. And many times veterans, when they come home, we don't wear that flag, right? We don't wear the hat. We come home and we do what we do, whether it's being a union worker, a teacher. Figure out how to draw those folks out and get them in the organizing teams. I think it's incredibly important. A. Philip Randolph put veterans around him when he was really organizing and mobilizing, some of the major actions during the civil rights movement. And that's one of our hopes with the June 6th rally in Washington, D.C., that's going to be live streamed across the country, that's focused on veterans. And this is kind of more of a more focused event to really put pressure on the attacks that Donald Trump and his administration, DOJ, has done against veterans, including ripping healthcare away from our trans siblings, which we were really upset about because every veteran who served deserves the health care that they were promised. There are massive attacks right now happening to veterans' employment. We see the potential for the largest layoff for veterans and military families in our lifetime. So there's a lot that needs to be said. So I recommend everybody checking out, uniteforveterans.org. It's another event. It's going to have a big concert, but we want to bring some attention to Washington, D.C. with a lot of American flags to embarrass them, because the next weekend it's going to be a quiet place because we're all watching, kicking out the clowns in Madison, Wisconsin, which I think would be really fun to be at.
And can you all say more? I mean, it sounds like you just explained, Will, a little bit more about the event on June 6th, but is it just happening in Washington, D.C., or are there other ways that people that can't make it to D.C. can get plugged in?
Yeah, there's definitely a way to get plugged in. We attached our outreach packet. There's social media packets. There's going to be a great live stream. This is going to be a well-produced event. The Dropkick Murphys are playing a 45-minute concert in between during the event. We're going to have great speakers, from veterans who have been laid off to some very high-level folks, including Jon Stewart, and some other surprises. And we're also going to be showing what the American warfighter looks like. And I know that's a word that we don't usually hear in these spaces. We've heard Pete Hegseth talk about a lot. I'm hoping you guys are going to embarrass him a little bit about his Signal Gate issues while we're making fun of the clowns. But he likes to tell us what the veterans community is, and it looks like me. And that's completely, I almost wanted to say another word, but it's BS. And we want to draw a very stark comparison on that day of veterans from all kinds of backgrounds and communities who serve their country and care about it, and who deserve to be respected and are not being respected at this moment.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. In the interest of time, we're going to move on, but we received a lot of questions that hopefully we can circle back to during Q&A that you all can respond to. But thank you, Chris and Will. And next up, we have Donna Alvangada.
Hi, everybody. Hello.
Hey, Donna. Hello, welcome. If you can just briefly state, who you are and what you do, and then we can also jump into some questions.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so Donna Alvangada, she, her pronouns. And I'm an artist. I'm a performer and a social practice artist. And I've been doing this for a long time. I do a range of work, but a lot of what I do is supporting grassroots campaigns and activists and organizers to help really amplify their messages and reach the people that they want to reach, and do that with large, spectacular visuals and the storytelling out on the street, and figuring out how do you make actions that are joyful, that people want to be a part of, that feel like a party, that feel like, this is the movement that we're building that we want to be a part of. So if you saw any of the like viral in Philadelphia, the big week long, count every vote street parties that were going on in Philadelphia with the dancing mailboxes and all that after the 2020 election, I was a part of that team. I've done work with the ACLU and Natural Resources Defense Council and election defenders, and a lot of other organizations. So I'm really, really excited about, I'll be making a video toolkit for folks who want to start organizing locally to make a circus in your town, even if you're like, I have no idea where I'd even start, or I've never made anything. I'm so excited to talk to folks and brainstorm with folks and problem solve, to be like, okay, how do you organize your people, and how do you cut and sew something or glue something in a way that is fun and accessible, and helping build the creative, imaginative movement that we all, I think, want to be a part of.
Thank you, Donna. So you're someone who has been involved in the use of political theater, and I wonder, like we were talking about this earlier about spectacle versus clowning, but how do you see the role of spectacles in circus art in energizing grassroots activism and creating that, fostering creative protest?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So, I think there's been sort of an answer for that forever, but particularly that's, valid. But I think particularly in the moment that we are in, right? I think it's safe to say, like, we are by and large, right? Folks are depressed. Folks feel fucking defeated. Folks feel like, where is the leadership, right? We've been hearing this, like, what? No, nothing's happening. No one, what people need to do something. People need to do something, right? And everyone's kind of waiting for that leadership to arise, or waiting for that moment or that call. And I'm super moved and touched to see how many people are on this call. I'm like, oh, thank God, it's great to be here, right? And so, okay, but feeling defeated and depressed is not, if you walk into a meeting and everyone's like, hi, we're all here to be defeated and depressed, it's not, that's not the movement you want to join. That's not like, oh, let's all get together and do something. So for me, creative, spectacle, fun, joy, humor, these are all just the most accessible on-ramps for people, right? It's a way in. It's like, oh, there might be it might be fun to go to this protest, right? It's not going to just be moving. It's not going to just make me feel like I got a gold star and I did my civic duty. It's like, it will be fun, and it will be empowering, and it will be enlivening, and be a reason to come back, and a reason to grow the movement, and a reason next time I'll bring my friends and my family who are, who said they were all protested out. So it's a huge base building tool, and it's a huge tool of momentum to keep us going, because the burnout is real. It's very real. And so finding ways to organize and protest and be together in ways that feed us and grow us and nourish us is huge.
Absolutely. And I wonder, obviously the use of satire and spectacles, sometimes people will look at that and be like, oh, they're not taking this seriously. Like, that's some of the feedback that we've even received about our circus actions. But in your opinion, like, how can the playful and the powerful nature of spectacle and these circus movements help convey critical messages while still ensuring that that focus remains on holding people accountable, and that, it shows that we're very serious about this?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, first, just to anyone who, to this question of like, oh, you're not taking it seriously enough. I mean, how many people here get at least some little bit of their news from Jon Stewart, from The Daily Show, from John Oliver, from Seth Meyers, from SNL Weekend Edition? I mean, right? Like, or Weekend Update, right? Like, these are, it's real. We actually, this is like a larger thing, but societally, we have this, it's ingrained in us to trust comedians and to trust people in that clown role, because we know intuitively that that's their role. Their role is to point out issues with hierarchy, issues with systems that aren't working, and to break taboos and to say uncomfortable truths, right? That is the role of the comedian societally. So so I would just say that, and that comedy is very difficult and very and is a really serious, it's a serious form. Now, as for how do we do this, we keep laser focused on our targets, right? And our targets are not, in this case, our targets are not our neighbors who voted for Trump or our neighbors who didn't vote, right? Our targets are the people at the top. Our targets are the people in power. They are the administration. They are the electeds who are not doing their jobs. Because we really, because those people are in charge, and that is where the institutional power is. And so if we can target them, huge, right? I mean, you know, the argument has been made that, you know, the whole reason Trump ran for office in the first place is because Seth Meyers cracked jokes about the potential of him running for president at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, right? So back before the 2016 election. So humor is and satire are powerful tools when wielded appropriately.
Absolutely. And I totally forgot, like, that low-key was his villain origin story. We forget what that does to people, you know, and that's like a common thing that we see in different movies and stories, someone getting made fun of and then that radicalizing them. And, you know, so harnessing that power to actually do something good, I think is super amazing. And also, Donna, I wonder, I mean, with the work that you're doing, if you can share examples or experiences where your approach with political theater and performance influence audience engagement or community organizing, whether it's like past actions that you've done, and what lessons can organizers draw from that experience? Because we probably have a lot of March hosts on this call as well that are trying to get some sort of inspiration or understand a little bit more how they can improve their event outcomes.
Totally. So like already, I feel like already we're in a good place, right? There's this larger concept that folks are getting behind, and it's about joy and fun and community and making it both accessible and kind of a stretch for folks and a stretch for our creativity. And that's huge. So a couple of years ago, actually, that's why when I heard about this, I was so excited, because a couple of years ago, I got called by the ACLU and Amistad Law Project here in Philly. They called me up and they said, can you make a circus in a week? Because here in Philadelphia, we'd elected this very progressive DA, Larry Krasner, who wants to eliminate cash bail and isn't, locking people up for nonviolent offenses. And he was elected by a very, very wide margin. But our Republican State House was trying to impeach him on these bogus charges. And they had moved the impeachment hearings to this part of the city that, like, everything here happens in City Hall, right in the middle of the city. But they had moved the impeachment hearings to, like, really far away where there would be no media coverage. No one would know what was happening. And they were trying to do this whole thing to basically disenfranchise the Philadelphians who had elected him and have nobody know about it. And so these organizers said, can you make a circus? Because we need a literal circus. We want to, say this is just a political circus. It's not a legitimate hearing. It's not a legitimate impeachment. And we need a literal circus to be able to get media attention, to be able to get people's eyes on that this is happening, and they're trying to disenfranchise Philadelphians. And so with 1 week's notice, we put together a circus. We made a dancing bear puppet. We made a giant elephant. We made a lion that was like these two little 8-year-olds in a lion costume. We had acrobats. We had clowns. We had a ringmaster. It was really fun. And it that happened, I think, in, September, at the end of the year when the local paper did their year-round, year in review. It was one of the top 10 things that was like, what made us think that Philadelphia can't even be real? Was like, oh, they had a circus about Larry Krasner's impeachment. So it really accomplished the goal of getting eyes on stuff. And I think in this case, right, helping people around the country feel like, oh, there are people organizing, there are things happening, there is a movement growing, and we don't have to just sit home and feel depressed. And there's something I can plug into that will feel meaningful and a reason to keep going. That's awesome.
And fun, right? Like we're hoping that people realize, oh my gosh, I can have fun while doing something meaningful. So
no, if I can speak to that just for a second, right? It's joy and fun, right? Again, kind of like saying, like, how can you be taking this seriously if you're being comedic and if you're doing parody? You know, how can you be feeling the gravitas of the situation if you're building this joyful movement? I think for me, like, I look with a lot of reverence at the early activism during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s with ACT UP and Grand Fury and the organizing where, you know, people, to me, it's just such an incredible example of people are literally watching their friends, their loved ones, their chosen family, just literally dying, you know, helplessly for years. And meanwhile, having this amazing activism, right? This like totally unhinged, completely absolutely brave, literally death-defying activism that was also rooted in nightlife and in dancing and in music and in this subculture that kept people going through joy and celebration and love and the embrace of community. So I take a lot of inspiration from that.
Absolutely. Thank you for raising that point. And then also you talked a little bit about what this can look like, but I wonder if you have any other thoughts or offerings for folks on this call who are hoping to host their own actions about what you might recommend to help them build a circus-like atmosphere, you know, that encourages audience participation and creativity.
Totally. So I will be, like I said, I'm going to be putting out a video toolkit that will be made available. I'm not in charge of making it available, but, you know, the Women's March folks will make it available. And it will have everything from videos about like, okay, how do you even get started? How do you kind of assemble a team and who's on your team? To, okay, let's think about how do you make a big visual impact with no time and no money and no skills? How do you make some flags? How do you make some messaging that's really powerful? How do you keep people excited about this? And you can do it. I guarantee you, if you've gotten this far and you manage to show up on a Thursday night to this call, you can make it happen. And the first thing I would say, like, do this now, and then you can watch the videos. Find the local drama teachers in your town, whoever like runs the drama club, runs the debate club, runs the dance school. That person, those people have they're probably politically aligned, and they have what you're looking for because they know how to organize people. They know how to move bodies in space. They know how to get people excited. That's who, find that person and get them involved. That's the first step.
Yeah, that is a wonderful suggestion. And I absolutely second that and echo that. Yeah, you know, and also like someone else had mentioned on our team, like people who do gymnastics or acrobatics, like all those sorts of performance artists, and inviting them and just diversifying the different types of organizations and groups that come to your action.
Yeah, people
absolutely.
Who already understand the value of creative expression, you're not going to have to sell them on it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Donna. I think that is up for your time. And we have a couple more speakers actually. So I know that we are running very quickly through this, but everyone just has so many amazing things to say. So I wish we had more time. Thank you so much, Donna. And we will circle back during the Q&A at the end of the call. All right. So next up, we have Ivan Marovic. Oh, hello, Ivan. Welcome.
Hello.
If you can just introduce yourself and your organization, and then just like the other folks, I'll jump into some questions.
Okay, my name is Ivan, and I had an organization called ICNC, the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict. And what we do is we do research and education in civil resistance and the way people can use nonviolent action to fight for rights, justice, and freedom. But I also was, back in the day, this is 20th century, student organizer myself and one of the leaders of the Otpor movement that helped bring down nonviolently Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia. So I cut my teeth So what I talk about is not just theory, but also practice.
Yes, you have done so much incredible work. And I wonder, in your work, what role does satire play in both mobilizing resistance and creating a shared sense of solidarity?
I have to say that there are so many things that humor and satire do for movements. They're actually much more strategically important than we give them credit. And so I could say from the research that was done by people like Janjira Sombat-Punsiri or like Mike and Sorensen or others, but also from my own experience, I can, with the stuff that we were doing back in the day, is that there are several things that the humor does. First is, it's not just fear that is the tool of authoritarians, but also apathy. So through combination of fear and apathy, they manage to rule populations. Humor breaks both of them. It lowers fear because also allows for a movement to remain nonviolent, which is also important for the success of the movement. But it more importantly lowers fear, but also breaks apathy and allows people to, how shall I say, spring up and to get activated through the use of humor. Another thing that is also important about humor and satire, especially satire, is that the best humor is about power and about challenging power. So actually, because nonviolent movements are about shifting power relations and power balances, humor actually helps them with that. So I think, there are so many different things on the emotional level, but also on the political and strategic level that humor allows movements to do.
Yes, thank you. And, you've been doing this work for a long time. You have explored the historical and global dimensions of fighting fascism. And so I wonder, how have past movements successfully harnessed humor as a weapon against authoritarianism? And if you have lessons that modern activists can draw from those movements?
Yes. So it goes a long way in history, but I would say that the way humor was used in the past and the way it is used recently has changed a little bit. So for instance, if you look at like historic examples from the mid 20th century, most of the humor was done through like cartoons or through theater, through movies. We remember The Great Dictator, which was Charlie Chaplin making fun of fascism before the Second World War actually started. But towards the end of the 20th century, what we see is more participatory humor. So it started already in the 60s with the Situationists, but especially towards the end of the 20th century and the early 21st, we see movements which kind of organize street theater and organize carnivalesque types of humor that actually helps them convey that message. So it's not only limited to classic humor like cartoons or satirical theater or something like that, but it's actually pouring into the streets. And I would say one very important variation of that is the use of dilemma actions. Dilemma actions are things that movements use no matter what. They put an opponent in a dilemma that they don't know how to respond. If they respond, they have a problem. If they don't respond, they also have a problem. I'll give some examples later. But when that dilemma action is faced with which actually infused with humor, it even creates like a much more bigger effect. So for instance, in Egypt during the Tahrir Square protest in 2011, when the supporters of the regime started attacking demonstrators and throwing rocks at them and actually trying to kind of intimidate them to leave the square, the protesters started wearing funny helmets to protect themselves from the attacks. So it's not that those helmets actually protected them much, but the fact that they were all funny and very coloresque and very, very joyful actually created a situation where that intimidation backfired.
Thank you. So I didn't even know about that. Thank you so much for that historical background and those examples. I wonder also what practical advice you can offer on using humor to not only mock oppressive systems, but also to build a deeper and more enduring resistance movement.
So I will share some of the things that we did back in the day when I was with the Opera Movement. So I'll give one example and draw lessons from it. So we had this action. We used a lot of street theater, and one of the actions that we did was called Barrel of Laughs. So we would put like a big barrel in the street, and on that barrel we would put sign that says, "We're collecting money for Milosevic's retirement. Please insert the coin." And then there was also a baseball bat next to the barrel, and it said, "If because of Milosevic's economic policies you don't have a coin, blank the barrel." So we would leave that barrel in the street, and people would pass by, they would read the sign, they would say, "Oh," somebody would insert the coin, somebody would bang the barrel. When they bang the metal barrel, because of the noise, more people show up. So in the end of the day, the police comes over, they see there is a ruckus, they see there is like a turmoil, they don't know what to do. Whose barrel is this? They ask, nobody knows. And so then they pick up and take away the barrel, in which case we snap photos and we send it to the press. So the police, this is the dilemma action. The police, if they leave the barrel, more people show up. If they take it, they look silly. But it's actually, they're not angry at the movement who put that barrel. They end up being angry at those kind of superiors who sent them there. So what does this barrel do? It creates an opportunity for conversation, because humor is an opportunity for us to engage with our fellow citizens. It is an important moment where they can actually see their everyday life through a different lens. This is what humor allows us. And also question, do they contribute to the continuation of these of this through their lack of action or insufficient action? So in a sense, it's an opportunity for citizens to get activated. So in a sense, I would say that using humor as a conversation starter, using humor as a way to highlight some of the problems that people are facing in an interesting way, in a way that is activating, but also going back to my earlier point, lowering apathy and lowering fear is actually one of the reasons why we should think about humor as a way to kind of use it as for political communication, because humor is political, because it is about power.
Absolutely. What a wonderful way to end this conversation. Ivan, thank you so much. We are going to move on to our distributed organizer, who's going to talk a little bit more about hosting actions, but we will circle back with you at the end during our Q&A. Shauna, if you can please join us on stage. Welcome, Shauna. If you can introduce yourself for folks who don't know who you are, although I'm sure many people recognize you, and just talk a little bit about what you do at Women's March, and then if you can dive into how to host a local action or how people can join a local action.
Absolutely, happy to. I'm Shauna Nipper. I am the National Distributed Organizer at Women's March, and what I do is support all of the folks who are hosting actions as grassroots actions across the country. And so I've been in the background of this conversation, which has been great, watching the comments come in. And there's a few things that I just want to address right off the bat. There is a link on the screen now for folks who want to sign up, but you can also search for your local action on that same map. So you can go there and you can check what is happening near you. And if there isn't anything near you, that's where I would come in, because you can put something on the map and I can help you to stand up an action. We send you kits, we send you information. I'm here, for office hours. We meet with people, we help folks get what they need to really get their action off the ground and stand up in local communities that maybe have never had things happen like this and have been waiting for someone to be that leader that everyone else is also waiting for.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shauna. Okay, we are surprisingly doing somewhat well on time. I'd love to have folks get added back to the screen so we can go through some Q&A. Okay, so we have a lot of questions for our speakers this evening. Okay, so we have one that I will show on the screen. We have had some people criticize our carnival themed protests and saying that it's a waste of money when we could be using that money to actually help people. How can I respond?
I think it's very simple. I'll jump in there. I apologize for that, but we're about to see hundreds of thousands of people probably lose healthcare and SNAP benefits from kids. So anything that we can do to resist and fight back at this moment is incredibly important and worth the investment, both in time and energy. It's just I've got to say that this is not a time to sit by the sidelines.
I would also say, I mean, the idea that it's a waste of money. I mean, I don't know what money people think that people are talking about. I mean, the idea of a bunch of people. This is a protest like any other protest in terms of it's folks organizing their communities, pitching in, doing what they can with what they have.
I would also just, from the perspective of folks who are organizing locally, they're not spending money. They're making things out of cardboard. They're borrowing children's games to make, circus acts. They're thinking outside the box. They're thrifting. They're doing things to stay within really minimal budgets. And when we get the actions on our map, provide services to send blast emails to folks. It's all included. We advertise through our networks. So I'm not sure how much money folks think people are putting out for these, but it's not an exorbitant amount of money coming out of individuals' pockets that just wouldn't be keeping with our values.
All right, I see another question. Someone asked, can drag performers attend? I think that's a fantastic question. And I don't know, Donna, if you have any insight on the use of drag.
Oh my God, bring it, please. I mean, talk about people who know what they are doing and people who can be providing leadership. I mean, I can't speak for all drag performers. A lot of them I'm sure would be like, no, just let me do my thing. But absolutely, these are folks to look to for leadership, especially because, in a lot of states, a lot of places, drag is being targeted and, being made illegal in public spaces, being made illegal in, anywhere that there's children. So a lot of these folks are well versed in using this. My personal favorite person right now is Bridget Bandit, who's a drag queen in Austin, who goes and testifies at the State House and has messages on her dresses that she makes. I mean, really, really amazing work is coming out of the drag community right now, political work. So absolutely.
Yes. Okay, we have another question here. This is an interesting question. Can someone comment on how Dr. King's nonviolence principles need to be in play during our demonstrations?
Oh, I can. I mean, just because a collaborator I work with is very well, has a lot of training in Kingian nonviolence. And my favorite thing that I've learned from him in this vein this is all I'll say, is that we want, oh God, now I'm going to mess it up. But right, that basically this Kingian idea that we want to be, this thing of we want to be targeting the systems and the institutions of power, and we want to be conciliatory and empathetic and loving to those without power. So, right, like the Trump voters are not our targets. Those are not our enemy. Those are people who also do not have institutional power and who are not actually determining the systems of oppression. We want to be targeting and being aggressive toward the actual systems. And that's what's going to help create the change.
And also, I just kind of jump in as well. Like we know that nonviolence is more effective. I think there's some really good research out there. I'm forgetting the author, but that a nonviolent movement is 11 times more effective than other forms of protests. So if you really want to get something accomplished, it needs to be done that way.
Yeah, let me second that, and I'll name the authors. This was Erika Chenovet and Maria Stefan. Their seminal book, Why Civil Resistance Works. They actually found, like, they did all the research of all the cases from the 20th and early 21st century, and it was like unbelievable difference between violent and nonviolent action, and nonviolent action is much more likely to wield results. And not just that, but also result in a lasting democracy, in better stability, and all other outcomes, that are not just success rate.
Absolutely. So another question, do you think that calling what protesters are doing as a circus diminishes how important this is? And we talked about this a little bit earlier, I think, Donna, during our conversation, but I wonder if folks have anything to add here.
Stay there.
I mean, I do not think so. I mean, what is going on right now politically? I mean, obviously a lot of it is just legitimately horrifying and cruel. A lot of it is also ridiculous, right? Like it is ridiculous that the Secretary of Homeland Security literally does not know and says publicly in the State House, in the Capitol, that she doesn't know the definition of habeas corpus, and actually just states a completely incorrect definition. So, I think a lot, there's been some talk on the left, right, about like we can be a little bit uptight and a little bit stressed out when the other side is just like letting their freak flags fly. And I think it's worth considering the ways in which it might be a little strategic to let our freak flags fly, particularly since those are the flags that are currently being targeted. So we might as well meet the moment. I think that's just me talking.
Any others want to respond to that before we move on?
I think calling things how it is always one of the best ways to do it. And when people hear the idea of a circus on the 14th, they're going to know exactly what it's talked about. I think that's the power in the name and the power in the idea of highlighting that aspect of the last 100 days.
Yep. We have a question from Suzanne about any suggestions as to what writers, specifically poets, might do.
I would love to see some limerick type poetry that has that kind of satire element. I think that would be amazing. It would feed into the theme, and those type of poignant poetries have happened throughout history. So I think that would be an amazing thing to write.
There's another question here, and I wonder, Chris and Will, it seems like this is targeted towards y'all, but someone says that they're doing a D-Day event in Lansing and they're having a hard time reaching vets, especially those who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Do you have any tips on outreach or how people can be approaching these communities and organizations?
You can always email us at info@unitedforveterans.org.us. I'll drop that in the chat. I'm typing on it. But well, look, there's lots of local veteran service organizations that are in the region that I'm sure would be able to connect with other veterans. So I would encourage folks to reach out to those types of groups. But I'll provide the email.
Another thing is, sometimes reaching out to veteran organizations aren't always the best thing, but kind of going back to who the veteran is, where they are in their space. They're on your boards. There are, every union hall in America has veterans on their executive board. When you look into your community groups, there's 5,000 people on this call. I've had a couple that I know who are veterans who I didn't know were on, text messaging me. They're in our communities, they're in our groups. So reach into your groups first to find those veteran leaders. And one point about the veterans message, you don't have to have a million of us. The idea of the veterans message isn't so much to just talk to the veteran, but it's to give that valued messenger to a broader audience. So bringing and highlighting veterans along with everything you're doing just helps add value. And it's much easier to find 5 or 6 of us, when it comes to the different groups that we all hang out in. There's a lot of veterans out there who just do not carry that badge. And sometimes empowering them to do that is just one of the best things in the world, to give them that extra boost.
And Chris or Will or both, someone is asking if non-vets can participate in June 6th.
Yes, absolutely. Veterans and allies. We, this democracy doesn't belong to just one community. And so we want to have everybody out there.
Yeah, I'll just follow up that. I think it's incredibly important to have other folks out there supporting, again, why we named it Unite for Veterans, Unite for America, is the idea as veterans, we want to support, all of these awesome activities that the resistance movement. And at the same time, it would be nice to see, folks coming out and supporting us in a real way. Before I get off the hook, because I don't know if I'm going to get to talk again, I get thanked for my service a lot. Chris does. What's happening on this call, what's happening with the 14th, with the 6th, with every single movement that we're going to have for the next few years, you guys, everyone on this call is doing more for their democracy than I ever did in uniform. Like, we are actually fighting for our country. So I want to thank every single one of you for jumping on this call, all 5,000 members and the organizers, for your service to this country. It's incredible to see people coming together right now. And I always have to say that when I'm in a space like this, because I think it's important for me to put that out there, to thank everybody for their service.
Thank you. Someone asked, does my life-size Trump voodoo doll that I made work as a prop? I think yes. I think that's a wonderful addition. I don't know if anybody else wants to add.
I think that's a big yes.
And then we have another question about suggestions on how to find people in our community to join a march. How do we organize? Shauna, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple ways you can do that. You can look for already active organizations. I know after Women's March announced Kick Out the Clowns, I'm going to say the whole title, Kick Out the Clowns, and the greatest shit show on earth. After that was announced, we did see Indivisible and 5051 and some other organizations that have local groups come out, and they're also participating in events that day. So if you have those groups, feel free to get with them and check on our map that we're going to throw up on the screen again, just to make sure we have that available for folks. And all these links will be sent out to you as well, as long as you've registered for the call. But you want to check on the map. If there's nothing there, the first step is to put something on the map. Because what I would say is, if you put it, it's like what, I don't remember the movie about the baseball field. If you build it, they'll come. If you build it, they'll come. And so once you get it on the map, you'll have people sign up, and you can send them messages and ask for help. And we'll help you do that. But we also provide the background, the structure, toolkits, graphics, all the things that you need to really get the message out, get it out on social media, and start building. We're also going to be doing a training that is a safety-oriented training for folks who are organizing. We want to make sure people know the background and really how to do this. And I promise you, I've done it in my local community before I ever got on these calls. And it's something that people say, oh, yeah, I don't know if I can do that. I promise you, you can. I promise you can.
Thanks, Shauna. And then there's another question here. What are some suggestions to notify people of this event? So you can absolutely share the link that we have at the bottom of the screen so that people can learn about actions that are near them. You can feel free to share that on your social media if you're comfortable, text it to your friends, email, whatever works for you. If you are in Madison and you're interested in helping with outreach, You are more than welcome to fill out a volunteer form. I think, Shauna, we have a link somewhere for that. But yeah, feel free. I am coordinating with volunteers on the ground in Madison and happy to have all the help that we can get. And I think that that might be pretty much most of the questions. And we only have a couple minutes left anyway. Are there any other comments or offerings that any of you want to leave with our audience tonight before we break?
I would just say, if you're on the fence and you think this is something you might want to do, but you're nervous about it, I'm going to drop my email on the screen and send me a message and we'll talk about it and we'll work it out.
So thank you, Shauna. I have a couple more things that I'll close us out with, but I just want to say thank you so much to all of our panelists for joining. I hope that everyone learned something about the use of satire and political theater in the resistance against fascism. I hope that you all are going to leave inspired for ideas that you can incorporate into your own actions that you're hosting, or even just how you are going to show up to local actions in your community. And I think we're going to have really great events all over the country. We're so excited to see what you all pull off. So thank you to our guests. And the only other thing that I have that I'd like to leave folks with is that our next mass organizing call will be taking place on June 6th. We try to do these bi-weekly. And the one on June 6th will be focused on healthcare. Obviously, there's a lot moving with recent cuts to Medicaid. And I think if we can, Shauna, share again the links to find a local action near you. And then if you are in the Madison area and you are interested in volunteering, like I mentioned earlier, please fill out our volunteer form. We definitely have a big use for volunteers, especially marshals. So if this is something you have experience with, or even if you don't, it's not a problem because we'll have some volunteer trainings to train folks up and get them ready. So please fill out this volunteer form and reach out if you're interested. All right, everyone. Thank you so much and have a good rest of your evenings.